Vladimir Bekhterev and the 23 Universal Laws. Vladimir Bekhterev, 1857 to 1927, was a Russian doctor and psychologist who came to accept the October 1917 revolution and founded a Soviet medical institute now named after him. But he was also interested in, quote, unified principles of world process, end of quote. This problem was taken up in his 1921 work, Collective Reflexology, available in Russian. In this work, in the second part, he formulated 23 universal laws, the basis for which he found in physics and biology, and generalized them as applicable across all fields. The laws are: 1. The law of conservation of energy. In a closed system, the amount of mass and energy stays the same. 2. Acceleration of an object is proportional to the force which is exerted upon it and in the same direction as that force. 3. The law of gravitation or attraction states that certain objects and living creatures are attracted to each other as they mutually complement each other. 4. The law of repulsion states that certain objects and living creatures are mutually repulsed, resulting in a mutual struggle and competition, which are just as necessary for improvement of society as mutual cooperation resulting from previous law. 5. An action leads to an equal and opposite reaction. Thus, when one movement is growing, there is a movement equal but opposite in sign. Witness recent clashes between Black Lives Matter movement and right-wing militia in the United States. 6. The law of similarity states that two movements different in size but similar in their geometry or social nature will have similar paths of development. Witness, for example, the development of the former USSR and the former Yugoslavia. 7. The law of cycles states that all phenomena have their own cycles, peculiar to their nature. Thus, for example, we see the cycle of spring, summer, fall, and winter in the course of a year on Earth. 8. The law of inertia states that things continue in the state of rest or movement unless acted upon by an outside force. Thus, for a social movement to start or slow down, it must be acted upon by an outside force. 9. The law of continuous movement and changeability. All things and creatures change continuously. 10. The law of dissipation of energy states that all matter and energy goes from uneven distribution to an even one. In other words, energy dissipates itself. 11. The law of relativity states that all movement is not absolute but relative to given physical and social conditions. 12. The law of reproduction states that the offspring inherit many characteristics of their parents, and this is true both for inorganic and organic worlds. For example, the planets inherit many of the characteristics of the nebula from which they were formed. 13. The law of selective generalization or synthesis states that in any system or group there is an organization to promote a general goal of this group. In Russian. Согласно закону избирательного обобщения осуществляется организация в каждом вообще коллективе в целях сплочения его частей для общей деятельности. 14. The law of historical succession states that before a phenomenon becomes a reality, all preconditions necessary for its existence must become true, must come to reality. For example, a wagon couldn't be invented before the invention of the wheel and domestication of animals such as a horse and a bull. 15. The law of adaptation states that parts of a system mutually adapt to each other. Phenomena, both inorganic and inorganic worlds, mutually adapt to each other. For example, a bike gear adapts to the chain which moves it. 16. The law of selection states that on the one hand, there is the instinct of egoism, which leads to struggle for survival. On the other hand, there is the collective instinct of solidarity, which leads us to form a herd or a collective, a company, in order to achieve a common goal and help each other to survive. And hence, nature selects those individuals who have both of these instincts in a certain proportion. 17. The law of cooperation states that when two parts of a system interact with each other, they influence each other according to the force which each has. Thus, we can judge interaction of two states as proportional to some of the forces which the two states exert upon each other. 18. The law of compensation or replacement. When a movement or development meets a certain obstacle in its path, it reasserts itself in another place or another form, but similar in content to the initial movement or development. Thus, when a branch of a tree is cut off, it is replaced by another branch which grows in a different spot. 19. The law of dependent relations states that one set of phenomena can be seen both as a cause of one recent event and a consequence of a still more distant event. 20. The law of individuality. An individual is the basis for evolution or development of any system. Thus, an atom is the basis for development of molecules. A nation is a basis for development of international system. Why is it possible to transfer laws discovered in one sphere to another? We can suppose that laws which operate in one sphere are a manifestation of still more general laws which operate everywhere. In one sphere, it is manifested in one kind of environment, and in another sphere, in another environment. Hence, we have a concept of analogy. According to one source, an analogy is a relationship of similarity between objects. Reasoning according to analogy is making conclusions about one object as it is similar to another one. Why is it that phenomena of seemingly different origin manifest certain analogies? For example, why is there an analogy between the weakest link in a metal chain and Russia as the weakest link in the chain of capitalism? This analogy was made by Lenin. The New Philosophical Encyclopedia writes, an important role in development of classical mechanics was played by analogy between a free falling bodies and the movement of celestial bodies. The analogy between geometric and algebraic objects was brought to fruition by Descartes in analytic geometry. Analogy of selection in animal husbandry was used by Darwin in his theory of natural selection. Analogy between light, electric, and magnetic phenomena was fruitful for the theory of electromagnetic field of Maxwell. All of these make us think that analogies are possible because seemingly different phenomena have a common nature. We are dealing with one and the same manifestation of laws, but either on different scales of the universe, as with free-falling bodies and celestial objects, or in different forms, as with electricity and magnetism. The above-mentioned encyclopedia writes further, often the main supplier of analogy is the leading branch of science. Thus, the physics of modern times have provided analogies for humanitarian and biological knowledge. And in our times, biological analogies are widely used in technical sciences. This is exactly what Bekhterev did. Knowledge from physics and mechanics of his time he extended to human society. Another concept similar to analogy is symmetry. An object is symmetrical when it can be changed in some fashion, and as a result we obtain the same thing from which we started. As some objects have symmetries, why the universe as a whole cannot be symmetrical? Certainly, this would make analogies possible. In other words, some key properties of the universe are transferred from one sphere to another, or different spheres of the universe are built according to symmetrical or analogous principles. Nature is like an economical teacher who doesn't bother to prepare anew for every lesson, but takes general principles prepared ahead of time and applies them in different ways to different lessons for different pupils. The property of symmetry is related to the concept of beauty. Beauty may be defined as seeing unity where there is difference. For example, there is a symmetry between the ocean and the vast field of knowledge. People who are deeply involved in discovering new knowledge are, as a rule, deeply interested in sailing the ocean as a form of rest. In sailing, they continue, but in another sphere, that which is their main occupation. Hence, unity in difference and the resulting beauty of activity. Thank you.